Now, we all know that keeping a conversation going in English is not an easy thing to do. So today, I'm going to help you out with that. Let's talk about it. Hey up, mate, and welcome to this episode of the BritSpeak Pod, where today we're going to be talking all about how to keep a conversation flowing in English. But before we get into all that good stuff, if you're new around here, nice to meet you, mate. My name is Dan, I'm a British English teacher, and my job is to help you feel more confident communicating in English. And on this podcast, I'm going to tell you all you need to know about British life, British culture, and of course, British English. Now today, we're going to be talking about that horrible feeling. You know, you are in a conversation, it's going well, everything's great, and then suddenly it just kind of dies, right? Like, you know, you're talking and then suddenly you don't know what to say next, and then there's that awkward silence where the world seems to stop and time stands still and you don't really know what to do, right? And when that happens, if you're anything like me, you start to second guess yourself a little bit. You know, maybe my English is not good enough, or I'm scared of making mistakes, so I'm not that fluent when I'm speaking, or some people just don't know how to keep a conversation going, you know? And the truth is that conversation is a skill. And just like any other skill, it's a skill you can practice and improve. So today, we're going to talk through a bunch of stuff that'll help you do that. Before we get into that, check this out. Are you still struggling to feel confident when speaking in English, even after all of them hours you've spent studying? Do you still feel stuck in conversations like you just can't find the words you're looking for? Well, trust me when I tell you this, mate. I know the frustration, but I also know the longer you wait to deal with the problem, the worse the problem is going to get. But it doesn't need to be this way. For less than $1 a day, you can get access to the BritSpeak Mates community, which will help you solve these problems. You'll get access to daily speaking challenges and the 24/7 live practice room. You'll get a community of other people just like you to help you stay motivated. You're going to be able to get answers to your questions from me and other community members. And you're also going to be able to get weekly speaking practice lessons if you go for the VIP tier. So for just $19 a month, you'll gain all of that so you can finally start feeling confident when you're communicating in English. All you've got to do to sign up is go to the link in the description or visit britspeak.co/BritSpeak-mates. That's britspeak.co/BritSpeak-mates. And I hope to see you in there soon. But for now, back to the episode. Good stuff. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff we need to cover today. So we're going to start off by talking about why conversations die out and what you can do about it. We're also going to talk about how to ask better questions so you can connect with people and also, you know, keep conversations moving. And we're also going to talk about some small talk strategies to help you sound a bit more natural when you're in a conversation. And of course, as always, I'm going to be answering questions from the live chat. So if you are watching, put your comments in the chat and we'll talk about it. But that leads to today's question. And that question is, what is the hardest part about keeping a conversation going in English? Like, what is it that you find difficult about that? So put your answers in the chat and we'll talk about them towards the end of the episode. So yeah, that's what we're going to cover today. Quite a lot to get through. So I suggest we just get started. Now, if you've ever been in a conversation that just suddenly seems to die, I understand your pain, mate. This happens to loads of people and it can be really, really tricky because, you know, sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it can be helped. Sometimes it can't. And that can make it a bit of a difficult beast, you know. But let's kind of go a bit deeper, shall we? So there are some reasons that this tends to happen, right? One very common reason is that you spend way too much time thinking in your native language. Now, when you start learning a language, it's quite common that you use the translation method, you know. Everything you hear, you translate it into your language. Then you think about what you would say in your language and you translate that into English and then you say it, right? And that's all well and good, but that takes a lot of effort. And also, it takes quite a bit of time, you know? And if you're translating everything you hear and everything you want to say, yeah, it can really slow a conversation down and it can cause it to stall and might even lose interest of the person you're speaking to. And that could be a reason that this happens. Another reason is you put a lot of pressure on yourself to be perfect. You know, we all suffer from perfectionism. And I say it every week, but perfection is a trap that keeps you stuck. And we don't like that. So you worry way too much about speaking perfectly, you know. You always try and find the perfect expression, the perfect vocabulary, the exact grammar that you should use in this situation. And that causes you to hesitate because you're thinking about what to say. You end up correcting yourself and you say, oh, maybe it's this way, maybe it's that way. And you kind of, you know, go round and round and round. And sometimes you'll repeat the same point multiple times just to make sure it's been understood. And you end up just kind of rambling. And rambling is difficult for you. It's also difficult for the person you're talking to, you know. If you've ever spoken to somebody that takes 10 minutes to get to the point, you know how difficult it can be, yeah? And another reason this happens a lot is you don't have a plan. Everybody needs a plan. Mr. T loves it when a plan comes together for you 80s and 90s kids. But yeah, so when you get stuck, you kind of panic because you don't know what to do. You haven't got a plan. Well, you know, in that case, you just kind of don't know what to do, do you? Like, so when you get stuck, you don't really know what to do or what to say to keep things going. And that's why one of the conversations just kind of ends up going silent. And all of this stuff is no bueno, which over the recent episodes I've come to understand means not good in Spanish, I think. Honestly, I don't know. But anyway, so that's the reason that this happens, right? And we don't like that. Now, this happening sucks for a number of reasons. You know, first of all, it feels awkward AF, as the kids say. AF stands for as fuck, by the way. So feels awkward AF because I'm down with the kids, you see. So when a conversation dies and that awkward silence kicks in, it can feel like you're just stuck and time stops and it's proper awkward and it's not nice feeling that. So we don't like that. Another reason it sucks is it makes chatting to people not fun. So if this happens to you all the time, every time you try and talk to somebody, you end up in this awkward silence, it's going to start to feel like a ball ache rather than something that you actually enjoy, right? Which means you're more likely to avoid doing it. And, you know, if you don't talk to people, you're going to be unable to make friends. And if you've got no friends, you're going to be proper lonely. And then eventually you'll end up in a 1-bedroom apartment with like 50 cats. And to be fair, that sounds kind of good some days. You know what I mean? But yeah, we don't want to be that crazy old cat bloke or woman or whatever. So suggest you make some friends, and that's why this sucks. Oh, all right, I guess that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Another reason this sucks is you're going to find it hard to make connections. You know, moving to another country is already pretty isolating. It's a pretty lonely experience. So if you've ever lived in a different country, you'll know how lonely it is. And when I moved to Japan, loneliness is hard work, yeah? So if you move to the UK, for example, you might feel isolated. And if you can't connect with other people, you know, at work or in social situations, that's going to make it way, way worse, right? And that's going to make you feel really lonely. And if you can't connect with people at work, it might even hurt your career as well, you know? So it's going to be hard to move up in your company if everyone thinks you're a bit of a loner and a bit weird, right? So, yeah, these are reasons why it sucks when conversations just die. Now, we can focus on the bit that you can do something about, right? So there's a few things that you can do to kind of keep conversations flowing and keep them moving, even if you're not really sure what you want to say. So the first thing is stop translating everything in your head. And I know this is easier said than done, but it's like this. Translating in your head is what most people do when they start learning a language. I started it in English, and I'm sure loads of you guys did as well. I started it in Japanese, and you guys probably do it in English. But learning to think in the language is a skill that you have to develop, right? It's not just something that magically happens. You have to do it. And what I used to do is, like, when I was on the train or when I was on a bus or when I just, eating my lunch or whatever, I just look at something, whether it's out the window or, whatever I could see there and then. And in my head, I'd try and think of all the words in Japanese related to what I could see, like a tree and a bench and a shop and, So I just try and naturally pick up these words in Japanese without thinking about what the English thing is, just trying to connect the image to the word. And then after a while, I'd start to kind of make sentences in Japanese directly about what I could see. There's a bench next to the bus stop, for example. And I would do that every day. I'd do it every chance I got. It only takes 2 or 3 minutes. But once you start developing that habit of looking at something, naming it and talking about it in the language you're learning without thinking too much about your native language, that's one of the first steps to developing thinking in English or thinking in whatever language you're learning. And I think if you do that every day, it'll feel weird, but eventually, at some point, you'll just be like, oh, I did it without thinking about my native language. That's cool. And anything we can do to move you away from the translation method to the more immersion method is going to work out pretty well. The next thing I want you to do, I want you to reframe your thinking, because if you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself in a conversation to be perfect, you're probably not going to be perfect very often. In fact, it's going to do the opposite thing, because we all know that perfectionism is bollocks, right? There's no such thing as perfect. Even natives like me, we cock it up all the time. Probably in this podcast, I've made mistakes loads of times, but I don't care, whatever. So you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be understood. That's the goal. It's not an exam. A conversation is not an exam. Nobody's giving you a score. Nobody's going to come up and be like, oh, thanks for talking to me today, but actually, it's only a band 5 conversation, that, mate. Sorry, no good, failed. Nobody's going to do that, So if the focus switches to let's just be understood, you can mime if you want to. You don't even have to use words. Just draw an interpretive dance if you want to. I'm not suggesting you do, but whatever. But practicing communicating different ways, So one game I love to play with my private lesson students is a game called Taboo. And the idea of taboo is you have to describe a certain thing without using the word or related words. So, for example, let's say the word is umbrella, right? And I'm not allowed to use the word umbrella. I'm also not allowed to use words like wet or carry or cover, whatever they are. And then I have to try and explain that. And the reason this is good is because it forces you to find other ways to deliver a message. And it's not going to be the most eloquent way. It's not going to be the easiest way. It's not going to be the perfect way, but it helps you get better at delivering the message, which is what we're trying to do in a conversation, right? Also, things like summarizing, like watching something and summarizing it in your own words, or paraphrasing, taking a text and rewriting it in your own words. All of these things are great activities that you can practice that will help you get better at delivering a message rather than being perfect, right? And it'll shift that mindset. Another thing you should do is develop a plan. Don't just go into a conversation with no idea. Go into a conversation and have some strategies ready if things go tits up. If you're in a conversation and it slows down, have a backup plan. Like, have a bunch of ready, prepared follow-up questions that you can just pull out whenever things start going slowly, right? Learn how to change the topic naturally when you can feel things slowing down. Or if somebody asks you a question and you need a bit of time to think, don't just leave an awkward silence. Use some hesitation devices saying, yeah, that's a really good question. I never thought about that before. all while I'm talking, I'm thinking in the background what it is I'm going to actually say, right? So fill the awkward silences with hesitation devices for you, or make sure you've got a bunch of prepared questions that you can bust out at any particular time, and learn how to change topics well, and that way you can keep things going, yeah? I think that's pretty useful. And the last thing that you should probably do is practice, flex that muscle, flex that conversation muscle. So practicing speaking, practicing conversations ideally, but if not, practicing speaking just in general will help you. But if you want to practice speaking with other people, the more you do it, the easier it gets and the better you'll get at it. So you need to kind of apply all of the skills we've talked about in real life conversations. So ideally in a safe space, For example, I've got something called the BritSpeak Hub. It's my private community where basically there's a way to connect with other learners and with me in group chat and stuff like that, where you can actually practice speaking to other people. And it also has daily speaking challenges. So, you can practice things like summarizing and paraphrasing and the taboo game, and all that stuff is already in the community for you. And yeah, I think it's something that if you're interested, you should check it out. So you can actually join now. It's $19 a month for the basic access, but it's not going to be this price for very long because starting this month, things are changing. It's getting better. So if you want to get in now while the price is cheap, it's probably a good idea. So yeah, basically that is what I think you should do if you find yourself in conversations that constantly just kind of die out, right? Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about today is about questions, because questions are a big part of conversations, but loads of us are just pretty bad at it, to be honest. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. So, like I said, a big part of conversations is asking questions, but maybe you're just asking really crap questions. Have you ever thought about that? I know I ask a bunch of crap questions every now and then, but it's seriously though, it's something that if you're not very good at asking questions, it's going to end up hurting your conversations, right? So what is the problem? Well, the problem is that you might be asking the wrong kind of questions. Like in English, there's basically two kinds of questions. We've got open questions and closed questions. Like a closed question is a question that can be answered in yes or no. Like, do you like cats? Yes. Okay, end the conversation. You know what I mean? So yeah, maybe you're asking the wrong kind of questions, right? Another problem could be is that you just ask questions about random topics. And this happens with me. I'm a teacher, obviously, and sometimes with students when they're nervous, they kind of just ask questions at random. They'll be like, what did you do last weekend? Well, last weekend, I went to the park. Oh, that's nice. What's your favorite color? Whoa. All right. Just completely random questions with no connection between them. It's a bit weird. So if you're doing that, definitely don't do that because that's not good. And the other thing that people do is they kind of panic and then they'll just ask like a million questions because they don't know what to do. And it feels like, when you see like police shows and they're asking they're asking about a million questions. Where were you? Where were you on this day? What were you doing? Why were you there? It can feel like that. It's like, bloody hell, it's not an interview, mate. It's a conversation. It's a two-way street, not just you asking me a million questions and me answering them. Like, it's a bit weird, isn't it? So these are common problems that people have when it comes to questions. Either they ask the wrong kind, they ask unrelated questions, or they ask way too many of them. Now, if you do this, you're going to maybe make people feel a bit weird. Like, I don't know, if somebody asks me too many questions that are not connected, just like random choice, and I don't know, I start to just feel like, are you actually listening to me, mate? Or are you just, while I'm talking, you're just thinking about whatever next question you want to ask? You're not actually listening to me, you're just preparing next question. And if that happens, I'm just like, yeah, I probably can't be arsed with this conversation, so I'll just try and end it as quick as I can. That is no bueno, as we've discussed in Spanish. By the way, if you speak Spanish, is no bueno correct, because I don't know. Anyway, so if you do that, you're going to make people feel weird. You'll also make yourself feel bad, because if you're in conversations that keep going badly because you're asking the wrong kind of questions, and you're eventually going to start to feel like, oh, I'm really bad at conversations and I'm just shit at English, which is going to make you feel bad. Not cool. And yeah, if you do this, conversations are likely to die and you end up in that awkward silence that we don't like. So yeah, and that's not going to be fun, is it? So I don't know. Generally, we want to talk to people and not just make them feel weird. They want it to be a positive experience for both people, not just one person feeling weird and the other person feeling like they're going to ask a million questions. So, something to think about. Now, instead of that bad stuff, let's talk about what you should do instead. So, the first thing I would recommend is stop asking so many closed questions and switch to open-ended questions, right? So a closed question, like I said, it can be answered with yes or no. But an open question, that gives the other person the ability to answer whatever they want. They can choose any words that they like and they can answer with them ones. So instead of like, do you like music? Yes, I do. End of conversation. However, if you ask me, Dan, what kind of music do you like? Well, I like 1980s pop polka. I don't even know if that's a real genre. But whatever, I could answer whatever I wanted, So open-ended questions, very good for small talk. Closed questions, not so much. Okay, so that means you should probably ask more open-ended questions. The next thing you should do is go deeper with follow-up questions. FUQ, follow-up questions, okay. So what I generally do, and what most people do, when they start a conversation, they start with surface-level questions. They ask like, what, where, when, these kind of questions. When did you move here? And what do you do for work? And, where are you living these days? And, that kind of thing. And once you've got the surface-level stuff and you found something interesting you want to talk about, start to go deeper on that topic by asking more serious questions with why and how, because that taps into the feeling and the reason, which is more likely that they're going to want to talk about it, So start with your basic question, then go deeper with your what and your why questions. Sorry, your how and your why questions. So that's a pretty good idea. Yeah, this is a big one. Ask questions related to the answer that they give you. Don't just, while they're talking, don't just be like, oh, I'm going to think about the next question I'm going to ask them. No, listen to what they're saying and then ask them a question about that. So, for example, maybe like you ask me, Dan, what did you do last weekend? And I'm like, well, I went hiking last weekend. It was really lovely. And you say, oh, that's nice. What do you do for work? It's like, mate, do you actually listen to what I'm saying? Like, do you give a shit at all about what I've just said? Probably not. That's proper stupid. If we're talking about my hiking trip, ask about the bloody hiking trip. Well, that's nice. Where did you go hiking? Well, that seems a bit more reasonable, doesn't it, than completely changing the topic at breakneck speed. So yeah, always ask additional questions about the answers that they've just given you, right? And the last thing you should probably learn how to do is change the topic naturally. Like, we don't just want to go, from hiking to what do you do for work to what's your favorite color. Like, instead, you can find an adjacent topic to their answer. So let's say, for argument's sake, you say, oh, Dan, what kind of food do you like? All right. And I say, well, my favorite kind of food is Italian food. And you want to change the topic. So Italian food. Okay. Maybe a good follow-up question to change the topic then. It'd be like, oh, I've never been to Italy before. Have you been there before? And now we're talking about travel instead of food, right? So yeah, kind of get good at changing the topics, right? And like I said, all of these things can be practiced in conversation. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the BritSpeak community, the BritSpeak mates, the BritSpeak Hub, whatever, it's currently in transition. It gives you a way to practice with other people. And if you go for the VIP tier, there's conversation classes with me and other members. So it's a safe space to practice some of these skills. So yeah, maybe you should check that out. The link's in the description, as always. But yeah, those are some things that you can do in relation to questions to keep conversations flowing and kind of just get better at asking questions. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about today is a big thing, right? Now, small talk is one of those things that has got a bit of a bad reputation. Like, a lot of people think small talk is annoying and pointless, and I were one of them, to be honest. I used to think that until I, got on a plane and moved to Japan in 2016. Because in the UK, I thought small talk were boring. Like, who wants to talk about the weather? Like, it's proper boring. And the reason I found it boring is that I didn't need it. And the reason I didn't need it is because I'd already got friends and a social circle, and I didn't really care about meeting new people. I didn't need to meet new people. So I didn't need to start conversations with people I'd never met before. So I didn't need small talk, to be honest with you. However, when I moved to Japan on my own and suddenly no friends, no family, well, I got friends and family, they just were other side of the world, And it turns out, it's pretty lonely and I need to make some friends. So how do I do that? Well, you got to talk to people first, Dan. Oh yeah. How do you do that? Small talk. That's how you do that. And to be honest, I was rubbish at it. At first, I was rubbish at it. But being a teacher and living in a different country, I've developed the skills of small talk. I've got pretty good at small talk. And I also finally understand why it's important, especially in your second language. It's double important in your second language. Now, you probably suck at it. I know I did. I definitely was fucking terrible at it, but maybe you're not very good at small talk. Maybe you don't really get it, whatever. So there's a few reasons why you probably suck at it. The first is nobody ever taught you how. There's very few lessons in textbooks about how to have a good conversation. There's loads of stuff to how to ask Jane what she bought from the supermarket and how to ask John about his daily routine. Like, all right, great, but how do I talk to people when I'm trying to make mates because I'm proper lonely living in a new country? It's not in this textbook. Anyway, so small talk has a kind of system and a set of unwritten rules and some expectations that can be hard to work out if nobody's ever shown you how to do it, right? And some people are good at it, some people are not. Just naturally, some people are good. They've got the gift of the gab, as we say in English. They're good at talking to anybody about anything. And other people are not. I were definitely in the second group. But nobody ever taught me how. I had to learn the hard way, but, I'm going to try and tell you how so you don't have to learn the hard way. Now, another thing is that maybe you just don't get it. You don't really see the importance of small talk. This was me, back in a past life. I didn't really see the point of talking to people about boring topics. Oh, great weather. Awesome. What a wonderful conversation. Thanks, random stranger, for talking to me about a topic I don't care about. Because I didn't understand the importance of it. I didn't understand why it's important. I didn't understand the purpose of it, I just thought, leave me alone. But I'm also a bit of a miserable bastard, so that's probably why. Anyway, and another reason you might suck at it is that you can't transition easily. Small talk is just one step in getting to know somebody. And maybe you can do the first step, the small talk, but then you're not very good at going to like the next stage. And, the next stage is where you actually get to know people and talk about interesting stuff, but you kind of need to go through small talk to get to that stage where all the good stuff happens. And maybe you're not good at switching. So that's why small talk seems annoying. Anyway, so really it boils down to why small talk matters. Why is it important? And there's a few things that I think. The first is it opens the door. Like I said, nobody cares about the weather. The British people talk about weather all the time. We don't give a shit about the weather. We don't care. But it's a way that I can have something in common with somebody I've never met. We can easily agree because it's raining and nobody likes the rain. So we can easily find something in common that we can then use to snowball into a conversation about something slightly more interesting, right? So small talk is a very easy way to open the door to that conversation, all right? Now, small talk also shows interest, right? Like, if you don't do small talk, people are going to think you're one of them, like, miserable, distant, uninterested people. Like, I'm not interested in talking to people. Just leave me alone. I want to sit and scroll through Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, and I don't know, whatever people do on that website, be mad about, I don't know, whatever people are mad about this week, whatever. So yeah, like, small talk matters because it shows that you're interested in talking to other people. It shows that you're social. It shows that you're fun to talk to, not just some miserable bastard. And then the other thing it does, it helps build connections. You know, through small talk, you then get to know people, and then you build rapport, and then based on that rapport, you can build relationships with that person, and you can build your social circle and make friends and feel like part of the team at work, and, you know, eventually get promoted to CEO or whatever it is. You'll never get promoted to CEO unless you're good at small talk. That's basically what you should learn. Now, that's great, but so what, Dan? You know, this is what. So, small talk is the key to starting conversation with new people around you, yeah? The reason for that is, imagine without small talk. You know, we're both waiting for a bus and you just look at me and be like, I've never been to Italy. Have you ever been to Italy? All right. A bit weird. You know what I mean? Or like, you know, last weekend I went to the barber shop. Okay. Like, I think you were on drugs or something. Which might be fun. That could be a topic of conversation. Who knows? But yeah, like, without small talk, it's just random questions thrown at people with no context. And that's one guaranteed way to look weird, to be honest with you. Another thing is that making friends is way harder. You know, if you can't start conversations with people because you don't like small talk, how are you supposed to eventually become their best friend? Magic? I don't know. Blackmail? I suppose that's a good way to become someone's friend. Blackmail. But yeah, like, it's going to be hard to make friends if you don't use small talk, right? And we know what happens if you can't make friends, don't we? You end up sad and lonely, and you're in that apartment with 50 cats. We know why this goes. Maybe that lonely old cat bloke. I mean, to be fair, I've already got 2 cats, so I'm on the right path. But, you know, now I am being facetious. I am facetious, by the way. I am purposely being amusing by pretending to be serious when I'm not. But the point is that, yeah, without small talk, it's hard to talk to new people, and therefore it's hard to make friends in an apartment full of cats, innit? So, instead of that, what should you do? Well, there's a few things you can do to instantly be better at small talk. I've got 4 very simple things that you could start doing right now that will instantly make you better at small talk. The first is choosing the right topics, because some topics are really, really good to talk about when you meet somebody, and some not so much. So, for example, bad topics for small talk are things like politics, religion, personal stuff, you know, gender identity, relationship status, and even football sometimes. You know, imagine you're in Manchester and you meet somebody like, oh, I'm a massive Manchester United fan, and they're a Man City fan. That conversation is probably not going to go very far, is it? So, stuff that's very divisive or stuff that's very, very personal, probably not a good place to start a conversation, you know? However, good topics for small talk, things like weather, TV shows, hobbies, what you're going to do this weekend. These kind of things are a bit more reasonable for when you're getting to know somebody, yeah? So that's one thing you could do, get good at choosing the right topic. Another thing that you should do is open up your ears and listen. Actually listen to what the other person is saying because you care, not because you're trying to understand the English, because you are actually interested in what that person is saying. Show interest in their answers and then ask related follow-up questions. That literally is like 90% of small talk. If you just listen to what they're saying and think about a logical question based on what they've just told you, that's most of small talk. So get good at that. One thing that people often get wrong is they don't understand the steps of small talk, right? And there's kind of 4 steps for small talk. And I call them the 4 E's of small talk, right? So first of all, we've got the engage. This is like the start of the conversation. Okay. Then we've got, I'm going to have to think about the 4 E's now. I can't remember what they are. Next one is second E. It'll come to me in a minute. I've gone blank. The second E is kind of like finding that thing in common, right? Finding that interesting topic to talk about. Step 3, I remember, is expand, where you go deeper to talk about that thing that you found in common and maybe talk about related topics. And then 4 is exit. The last E is exit. Now, I can't remember that second E at all. So it's the 4 E's are engage, mystery, second E, about finding something in common. Then we've got expand and we've got exit. And these are the different stages of small talk, right? And understanding how to navigate each individual stage of small talk, like how to start a conversation, how to, build rapport with that person and get to know them a bit better, and then how to transition to deeper topics and how to end the conversation, right? A lot of people don't really think about that stuff. So if you can learn about that kind of stuff and get better at navigating each individual stage, you're going to get better at small talk. And one way you can do that is by learning frameworks. Like one thing I teach a lot of private students I work with are a bunch of different frameworks that make it easier. So one that I always teach is the ACE framework, right? So the ACE framework is how to start a conversation with somebody. And ACE stands for anchor, comment, encourage, right? The anchor is you need to anchor the conversation in something that's related to both of you, like the place you are, or the event that you're at, or, I don't know, the food you're eating, whatever it is. So what you're going to do, you're going to make a comment about that thing. Let's imagine we're in a park, right? And the anchor is the park, because that's something we both got in common. We're both in the same park. And I say, this is a lovely park. A, anchor. I make that comment, right? Then C is to make a further comment. And this comment is a bit more personal. I'm going to tell you something related to what I just said that's a bit more about me. So I start off with, this is a nice park. And then the comment might be something like, I love going for a walk in this park. Okay, so I told you something a bit personal about me. So A and C leads to E, encourage. Now I want you to come and join this conversation with me. Come and be a part of this wonderful conversation. So I'm going to encourage you to get involved. And the way I do that is by asking a question related to what I've just said. So I started off with, this is a lovely park. And then I said, for me, I love to come for a walk in this park. And then to encourage you to get involved, I'd be like, do you come to this park often? Great. Conversation started. Lift off. Great. Sorted. And you can use that in loads of different situations. And this is something that I teach in a program called Small Talk Success. And Small Talk Success is part of the BritSpeak Hub community thing that I've been mentioning a lot recently. And basically, this month in the BritSpeak Hub, the course library aspect of it is all about small talk skills. So when you sign up to the BritSpeak community, you also get access to my ever-growing on-demand library. Imagine It's going to be like Netflix, but for English lessons, yeah? So you can choose to watch whatever you want. And the first kind of batch of videos are all about small talk, which is ongoing at the point of recording this podcast. So as always, if you're interested, you can get involved. It's $19 a month for the basic subscription. The link is in the description. But move fast because that price is not going to stick around for long because I'm currently revamping. It's evolving. But once it's finished evolving like a Pokemon, get ready. So, but yeah, basically, those are some things that will make you better at small talk. And being better at small talk means you're going to make loads of friends and eventually become, I don't know, CEO or president or something. Sounds good, doesn't it? And yeah, basically, that is the podcast for today. So I'd love to know what you think. Like I said right at the beginning of the episode, that I want to know from you guys, what is it that you find difficult about having a conversation in English? What is it that you find difficult about keeping a conversation going in English? Let me know. Put it in the chat and we'll talk about it. Because so far, all I've seen in the chat is people telling me that they like cats. Because I mentioned about having loads of cats. So, yeah, I got this comment here from Saitozilla channel. And she says, yeah, I already have 2 cats. I need to improve my English. Yeah, or just get more cats and don't bother with English anymore. Sounds good, doesn't it? Amin says, yep, same here, 2 kittens. I've also got Jackson from Brazil. Says, hey, from Brazil. Hola. Tudo bom? And more cat comments. So, yeah. Anyway, I'd love to know from you guys if you're listening to this podcast, on Spotify or whatever. Put a comment. Let me know what is the hardest part about keeping a conversation going in English for you. Now then, that's basically it for today. I just want to remind you once again, BritSpeak Mates Community, $19 a month. Get involved now while it's cheap because the price is not going to stay this way forever. And it is evolving. You'll get access to everything, including the library and the on-demand lessons and way to practice speaking with other people. And yeah, really, really good. So I'm going to stick around for a couple more minutes and just answer some questions and take it from there. Like, for example, I've got Alicio Musa says, hello from Mozambique. Wow, don't think I've ever spoken to anyone from Mozambique before. That's pretty cool. Thank you for sending that message. And Maria Laura Gutierrez says, interesting. Yeah, thanks, mate. I don't know, like, small talk for me is something that I had to get good at. You know, living in Japan, I really had to get good at it. And otherwise, I'd just been on my own all the time, and that's rubbish. But also as a teacher, I meet new people all the time. So I had to get good at small talk to help get to know those people. Imagine like private lessons. I teach people that I've never met before all the time. And yeah, like without having small talk skills, it's just bloody impossible, to be honest with you. So hopefully that knowledge that I learned, you'll pick up if you join the BritSpeak Hub and go through the small talk success course. I think it'll be really good. And speaking of private lessons, by the way, I have kind of got a couple of spaces open for new students. And if you sign up for the private lessons, you also get access to the community for free, by the way. So it's included for private lessons. So anyway, that's it for today. I mentioned earlier about not rambling, and then I've just proceeded to ramble for the last few minutes. So probably better if we just call it a day. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope you have a lovely week, and I'll catch you again next week. But until then, look after yourself. See you there.